Welcome, pudding people, to another episode of Everybody Loves Pudding. I am your host, Ken Seymour, with your other host, Richard Geiger.
Other host.
We have an excellent episode for you today. We have a special guest by the name of Markuson Nasso. Is it Nasso or Nasso?
It's Nasso.
Nasso. I knew I was going to get that wrong on the first time. As soon as I said it, this is kind of a recurring theme. I get to butcher every single person's name that I deal with. Unless it's Smith or, Jason, it's done. I've just gotten it.
At least it's consistent, though.
It is
right?
consistent.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, hopefully
I
I will.
don't have to remember your names. I just have to call you Pudding Guys.
Yes, there we go.
So for those of you who are not completely familiar with this gentleman, I was hoping that maybe you could give us a brief description of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hello, I'm Mark Hassan. I'm a comic book writer and an editor on the side, and so I'm really focusing on putting out comic books, and the comic book that I'm working on currently in its third volume is Voracious, and it's about a chef who travels through time, kills dinosaurs, and serves them at a restaurant in the present.
Fun.
Yeah, the artwork on the comics, if you haven't seen it, is really pretty fantastic. It's lighthearted and kind of reminiscent. Maybe I'm probably doing a bad comparison here, but it made me just a little bit think of the art related to Archer a little bit. That kind of thicker lines.
Yeah, he's an amazing artist, and he's definitely grown a lot since the book started. So I can't believe how much he's improved and changed his style, and I think he's really hit upon something great.
So, have you been a comic book fan for a long time? Is this something that's been in the process of developing, or is this a more recent interest for you?
I've been a comic book fan since I was 5. Yeah, I've been reading comic books since I was little. Started off with Batman 431. That's how geek I get with this.
Wow.
Which I have framed right above me in my office. So, yeah, my mom took me to the mall one day, and I saw this image of Batman hanging upside down from a tree on the front of a comic book, and picked it up, read it, and that was it for me. And I've been reading them ever since. I started real young when I was about 5, but didn't really get into collecting. And then that Batman came along when I was around 12, and then I've been reading comic books ever since. As far as writing comic books goes, I've been a writer for a while. I didn't really think about writing comics too much until recently. I would say maybe about 5 years ago.
So, since you've been interested in this for a long time, who are some of we'll start with the easy part, who are some of your favorite characters, things that just piqued your interest and got into your head and just wouldn't go away? I assume probably Batman, because of that, is one of them.
Yeah, Batman is a big character for me. My favorite character is Daredevil. When I got that Batman book, my mom took me to a comic book store. I grew up in Syracuse, New York. In Liverpool, which is just outside of Syracuse. I'm in Chicago now, but so when she took me to that store, a whole new world of comic books opened up. I didn't realize there were so many. And the big ones for me were X-Men, Wolverine, and then Daredevil. And a writer by the name of Annie Nocenti was working on Daredevil at the time, and she really made me fall in love with comic books. And I'd also say Peter David. He worked on The Incredible Hulk for 12 years.
Oh, yeah. He's one of my favorites.
And his style is something, I guess I try to put into my book. Definitely not as well, but I love how he was basically doing Joss Whedon-esque stories before Joss Whedon came along, where you had a lot of humor, heart, serious issues, and a really good play between the characters. And so I really love Peter David. And Nocenti was similar. She did a lot of weird stories where Daredevil was not in Hell's Kitchen, New York. He was on the road, and he would meet up with these crazy characters. And I just love that idea, that concept of Daredevil on the road.
Fun. So would you say that kind of growing up, and we had some discussions about this kind of stuff before too, like more recently, maybe starting in the 90s, you saw a lot more of the things on TV, cartoons, movies, and things like that. And you said some of your favorites were, besides Daredevil, or X-Men. Did you find that they were a little bit more, let's say, attainable? Like you could go to places and find more of those types of comic books than, let's say, maybe some other ones?
In the 90s, you mean?
Yeah, or like when you were kind of growing up and kind of getting into your favorites.
I didn't have any problems getting books. I actually read a lot of indie books growing up, too. Nexus by Mike Barron and Steve Root is one of my favorite books from First Comics when that was coming out. So the comic book store I went to, it's no longer in Syracuse anymore. It was called Captain Comics, and they had everything. It was a huge store. Grimjack, all these little indie books were there, and then all the mainstream books too. But yeah, X-Men, it was easy to get them. So I think I got pretty much anything I wanted there, and I've been getting the previews catalog. So Diamond, which is the distributor of comic books, so all comic book companies have to go through Diamond. They basically have a monopoly. And so you do solicitations through Diamond, and they put out a catalog, and it previews books that come out 2 months in advance. So as soon as I went to Captain Comics, they told me about this catalog, and it was free at the time, and you just go through it and pick out what you want, and then you can add to your subscription. So even if I didn't see books on the rack, which wasn't often, I could order whatever I wanted. And I've been using that catalog ever since. A lot of people don't, but I love it. So you always find some unique gems.
Oh, the Diamond catalog, that's a beast. I mean, that thing is thick.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing. It's one of the two key tools of any true comic book fan, or at least now I might be dating myself a little bit with this one, but it was always either the Diamond that you're talking about or the Overstreet Price Guide. Those
yeah.
are the two.
Yeah, they were Wizard Magazine also had the price guide in the back. Do you remember Wizard Magazine?
Oh, yeah. We were just talking to John Parrish last night, and we got into a bit of a discussion about Wizard Magazine.
Oh, cool. I know John. Yeah, he was right next to me at the NWICon.
Exactly. We are not shy about asking to get a little peek into the lives of anybody that has a story to tell. And, just looking around, it seemed like you might.
Yeah.
A few of them.
I actually just got the Diamond catalog today, so it's a ritual for me every month. I usually go through it twice. So, I go through it, look for things that I might want, and then I check it again just to make sure I haven't missed anything. So.
Now, you've never seen this, have you, Richard?
No, I've not.
Okay. So imagine a I don't know, it has the consistency of a phone book. It's about that, one of the thinner phone books. Mm-hmm. It has that thickness, the thin pages. On every page, it will have some basic breakdowns like he was talking about the comic books, but also you can get all the neat, it was one of the first places you could really get the neat geekery in, the little statuettes and the other accoutrement that can make any nerd cave truly repellent of ever having a date.
I see.
Yeah, toys, games, T-shirts, apparel. It's got everything in it. It comes out every month. Yeah, and like I said, for comics, it previews stuff 2 months in advance. But some of the stuff that's in there, they solicit it real early, and it might be coming out for like 10 months or next year sometimes.
Dang.
Yeah, it is kind of fantastic. It's a dream book. It's really a dream book. So where did you go to study? Did you go to study the art of writing at a university, or is this something that just kind of grew out of your own interest?
Oh, yeah. I went to school for writing. I went to Oswego State University in New York. I originally was at Stony Brook on Long Island, and I went there to be a scientist. I wanted to be an archaeologist / paleontologist because I had a love for dinosaurs back then too. But when I went to school, I also had a love for Indiana Jones as well.
I was wondering.
So when I went to school, I found out you actually, don't get to punch Nazis and use a bullwhip. You basically use a brush and, brush dirt for hours and hours. So that didn't really appeal to me. And I had to take some English classes, and I got to write some stories. And my English teacher told me that my stuff was really good, and I should consider being an English major. But he said that the school was not good for writing, and that I should transfer somewhere. So I wasn't that enchanted with Long Island anyways, so I decided to transfer to Oswego State, and they had a great writing program. It was neat because you can choose different tracks, like fiction, nonfiction, poetry, screenwriting. And then you pick two of them, then you follow the tracks like all the way through, and that's what you get your degree in. It's called English Writing Arts. So I quite enjoyed my time there. So yeah, I started writing a lot of stories. I got into journalism. I worked for some comic book websites, and I did interviews for the Comics Journal early on. So I was involved in comics, like active in it, but I just never really decided to actually write comics. I think maybe once or twice, but I always try to get an artist, and my friends never really followed through. So then life gets in the way. You get a job, and you just don't think about it until later.
And you said you grew up in the New York area, and you're in the like Northwest Indiana, Chicago area now?
Yeah, I'm just north of Chicago right now. So I've lived out here since 2000.
Okay, so my question was going to be, what brought you out here then?
Writing, actually. Where Syracuse is kind of, they don't have a lot. If you're going to be a writer or an editor or a journalist, you don't have a lot of options in Syracuse. It was kind of economically depressed when I was growing up. I think it's making a comeback. There's a lot more businesses growing there now, but at the time, if you wanted to do something like that in writing, you really had to go to a big city. And so for me, it was either New York or Chicago. And my girlfriend at the time also was thinking about going into publications. And so she actually interviewed in a town outside of Chicago and got that job. And so I just decided to come with her out here. And, been here ever since.
Nice.
Chicago is a fantastic area, especially if you are interested in some of the larger conventions and things that happened. John, which, like we mentioned, we talked to yesterday, who just got back from C2E2. Did you make the journey to that convention as well?
I did. I had a table there, and it was a great show. Yeah, we had an exclusive for Voracious and sold out of that, and just had our best show we've ever had. We consider it. Jason Muir, he's the artist on Voracious with me and my buddy. We've been doing that show. I think this is the 4th year. I've been going there every year as a fan or as a journalist, part of the press. But then, when I started writing comics, we started getting a table there. So I believe this was the 4th year for us at C2E2.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting dilemma that was illustrated to us a little bit last night, in that you get a table and you're generally at the table and you don't really get to go out and do much of anything.
That's true. I mean, I did do some things. So I'm there's a couple things I like doing. So there's some comic books that I want to get old issues of that I might have had as kids, but maybe got water damage or I just never collected. So what I do is I'll go and look through the back issues. And the series I'm trying to get is the old Conan books from Marvel. So I don't buy them online. I just go to the shows and do it old school like it used to be.
Nice.
Because I really liked the thrill of the hunt. You can get anything now. It's like instant gratification. You can find everything on eBay. But I like to go and look for those issues and just buy them there and kind of capture what it was like when I was young and I found these key issues. The other thing I like doing is getting signatures. I have a lot of hardcovers, and I actually bind some of my comic books too. So I got a few of those as well. I got to meet Chris Claremont again. We were talking about X-Men, and he was a big writer for me. And he actually did 3 novels based on the movie Willow. You remember Willow?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I didn't know that he wrote these novels. There's sequels to Willow until very recently. There's a bookstore, a sci-fi bookstore that I love. It's my favorite bookstore in all of Chicago called Bucket O' Blood.
Mm-hmm.
And they had one of these, like a paperback that said Chris Claremont sequel to Willow. And my friend, the captain, and I were in there, and he ended up buying it because we looked it up and found out it was the Chris Claremont who did all the X-Men stuff. So I went out and found the hardcovers, and the three of them, and I brought them to him. And he was surprised because I don't think most people bring him those books. They mostly bring him X-Men comics. So that was pretty fun because he told me a story for almost 15 minutes about him and George Lucas and how he tried to do an interview with them but didn't have the recorder on. And I felt a little bit bad because, the line for him, it can be long.
Yeah, it's got to be huge.
Yeah, but I was third in line, and the two guys in front of me had suitcases full of comics. So even though I was third in line, I had to wait 50 minutes just to get up to Chris Claremont. So
wow.
That kind of helped a little bit when he told me the story. But, he was pretty happy to see those books, I think, because he just doesn't see them that often. But they're really good. He wrote them with George Lucas, and, I loved Willow, the movie. So it was cool that he really got to build that world up a little bit more. And I love that kind of stuff. I don't know how I never knew about that. But it's cool that you discover something. One of your heroes from childhood did this other work that you didn't know about is really kind of a fun find.
Yeah, that's kind of fantastic. And that brings up a point, and you probably may know this more than me, just a matter of etiquette. I've always wondered, about the people that do that, bring the suitcase full of comic books.
Yeah.
That seems like bad form to me.
I mean, I agree. It is. I mean, a lot of professionals will put a cap on it. So I'm surprised Chris Claremont didn't, but he also charges for autographs. So, if they're bringing a suitcase, he's making a lot of money off of that because I believe his autographs were $10, and last year they were $5. So,
wow.
That's always tough too. Chris Claremont doesn't do a lot of comics these days, so I don't mind that he charges, and the travel and everything. It is expensive to go to those conventions, but I still think there should be a cap on it. If I was in that position, I would put a cap on how many books you could bring up because you don't want people waiting there forever. It's like you're taking away the experience from somebody else that's in line. And fortunately, Chris Claremont is very laid back. Like he doesn't rush. He'll tell you a story. He really is friendly and wants to meet everybody who comes through the line.
That's fantastic. And I will probably say that several more times, but that's just.
Yeah, but I got to talk to Jason Aaron again, who does Thor, and way back, I was like a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a Morrison Con for Grant Morrison that was held in Las Vegas, and it was one of the best cons I've ever been to because you paid like a set price for airfare and lodging and everything, and the convention was different because you got to interact with all the different creators and like play games with them, and all the sessions were about creating things, and that convention was really what got me to think about doing comic books, actually. And I've met like friends who I still hang out with from that convention, and it just was nothing like it, except for Fabletown and Beyond. That was another convention that was kind of like Morrison Con, where it was more about the creativity than it was about, hey, we're going to promote this book or that book. But Jason Aaron was there, and I make my own mead. And so he had been announced on Thor, but the book hadn't come out yet. And I brought my mead to give to him. And he had never even had mead before. So I took his mead virginity. And I believe that's why mead is such a prominent fixture in Thor, is because I gave him that. And I told him, if you're going to do Thor, you have to put mead in the book.
You do?
Yes. So seeing him again was really cool. I've corresponded with him over the years, and now I have some of the hardcovers that have been coming out, and the whole creative team for Thor on the last couple series with Jane Foster as Thor. The whole team was there: Russell Dowderman and Matt Wilson. I might have that wrong. the colorist. So that was cool to get those signatures and just to see Jason Aaron again. So I like those kind of moments. But, other than that, I did not go on the floor that often because it was crowded, man. It was really crowded. I felt happy that I had a place for refuge just to hang out by the table.
Now, do you do let's call it a circuit? Is there a few of the conventions that you were surefire hit up every single year, or like is it growing? Like this year, maybe 4, next year 6, and so on.
No, I don't have a circuit. I actually try to do different cons. C2E2 is a standard for us because we consider that our hometown show. I like NWI Con. I always seem to do well there, and people are really friendly and always come back, and it's the one-day show. So I'll do similar shows or the same shows here within the area, but every year I try to do at least one show on the West Coast and one show on the East Coast, and I have not done the same ones. And that's about as much as I do. I haven't really tried to do a ton of shows just because, it gets pretty expensive. And, we do an indie book, so people know of us, but it's not like have a line like Chris Claremont and can charge $10 for an autograph. And I'm also a writer, so artists, it's easier for them to do conventions because they can do commissions. While they're there, they can sell art prints. I can't sell that kind of stuff. I'm really just selling the books, so I make less money.
Nobody commissions stories from you?
No, people said that. Oh, write poems. Like nobody's going to buy that. Although I have done one cover. I've drawn one cover for Voracious. I'm a really slow artist. So I might do some more, and I've been thinking about what I might be able to do for art that I could sell, like holiday cards or something like that. But I also try to choose conventions where I know people, so that I just think of them more as a vacation. So I'm going to be going to Charlotte, North Carolina, and one of my very best friends, Dan, is there, and we're going to share a table. He hand carves superheroes and other characters out of wood. And they're just fantastic. So we'll split a table and have lots of beer and have a good time. So that's what I really look forward to.
Fun.
So is Voracious your first book, or had you worked on some other comics previously? I know you said you had done some other, publication work and some journalistic work. Is this like your very first foray, or did you kind of like dip a toe in and do like a guest writing spot on something or anything like that?
No, it's my first comic. I did one other comic book. It was I did an 8-page story called Never Alone. It was a horror story, and I did it for this Irish anthology called Lightning Strikes. That was my very first published work, and Jason did the art on it, and Andre, our colorist, did the colors on it. That came out before Voracious did. But, as far as like first really, getting into the industry, Voracious is the first and really the only comic I've had published so far. Of course, I'm working on other things, but yeah, it's the first one, but we feel really lucky because we're on the 3rd volume. That doesn't always happen for new creators.
Wow. So one of the other things that we noticed, you actually, the comic was obviously a thing that was focused on a lot of the cons and stuff like that, but you do a podcast as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm actually on 2 podcasts. Yeah. So, I used to do a podcast with my friends called the I Kick Your Face Comicast, and that ran for about maybe like 71 episodes. But we record every week because I started that podcast because I just wanted to bullshit with my friends who aren't in the same town as me. And so we talk every week, and I run the cast, and that cast ended just because I got really busy and I didn't want to do all the production work and, come up with all the topics and, do the editing and everything. I like doing it, but, it's a lot of time sometimes. So we still started talking, and then it just happened to morph into a different podcast. And so we launched a new one now that I have more time. And It's called the Pop Culture Kickdown, and there's only 2 episodes out. We're only doing it every month. I'm not really promoting it that much because we're really just doing it for fun, but I thought it'd be cool to get them up in case people wanted to listen to them. But it's basically a versus cast. It's we take 2 pop culture items. It could be 2 movies, 2 comics, 2 toys. You could take a TV show versus a comic, and then we compare them against each other. And we have categories to do that with. And it's been really fun. We have a lot of those episodes in the can, just because we've been recording for a while. But yeah, it just morphed into that. And I also wanted to do that because the I Kick Your Face Comic Cast was a lot about comics. And I wasn't writing comics at the time, so we were critiquing a lot of that stuff. But now that I'm in comics, a lot of the creators, they're my peers. So I didn't want to do critiques about comics as much, now that I'm a part of that. So I wanted to shift it a little bit to something else. So that just launched. We have 2 episodes out. We did 2 Von Damme films in the first one.
Nice.
And then we did Con Air versus Snakes on a Plane. And it's pretty funny, we just have a good time. We drink beers and we discuss these things and we find out which one is better. And then I'm also on another podcast called the Metalheads Podcast. I'm really into heavy metal. So they put out a call. These guys, they've been doing it for a few years, and they put out a call for guests to come on if they wanted listeners who just wanted to maybe come on and bullshit about metal. And so, of course, I wanted to do that. So I did it. We talked about Voracious, and I participated in they've got little segments that they do on the cast, and they liked having me on, so they invited me back to do like a year in review where we talk about the top 25 metal albums, and had a blast doing that. And then they invited me to be the 6th man on the podcast. So basically what I'm going to do is I don't go on every episode, but if somebody can't make a show, then I'll fill in. And then they do top 25 metal albums in the mid-year, and then at the end of the year, and I'll be on those casts. So, and I'm also going to do something else. I'm going to start writing an interview column for the Metalhead site, so we can have even more content up there. I just secured the first interview today, so it's going to be called 10 Horns, and that's 10 questions with metal bands. So I'm looking forward to doing that too.
Nice. So now that review, was that just for the year, or was that for like all years, that first one that you did?
For the Metalheads podcast?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one I did, it was the year, just like 2018. What were the best 25 metal albums? Everybody picks their top 25 when we go through the list and talk about them, and it's really fun. It's like, it was almost 6 hours of casting. It was great. What I like about the Metalheads guys is they just feel like friends, drinking beer and talking about stuff we like, which is what I like on my podcast. So that's why I started listening to Metalheads, just because I felt like I don't have anybody really to talk about metal. I don't have a lot of friends who are into it, so it was nice to go on that cast and be able to talk about something that's really dear to my heart. And now these guys have become my friends, and in a couple weeks, we're all going to the Decibel Metal and Beer Festival out in Philadelphia, and I'll get to meet all those guys for the first time. But, we're constantly chatting on instant message and stuff, so it's really neat to make friends who have the similar interests.
Yeah, I only really brought that up because I wanted to know how high Injustice for All got on the list. Because once you listen to that, what else do you really need to listen to?
Well,
that's the last good Metallica album. So.
You're not wrong.
Gee, I was inquiring to see, obviously last year's list wouldn't included any of them, but how Gwar made it into any of your lists that were not 2018.
I don't think Gwar makes the list for us.
Oh.
Like I was saying to him, that immediately brought you up in my esteem. I didn't see Gwar anywhere. It's like, wonderful.
I like Gwar, but I don't believe it was on anybody's list. Because they did have an album recently. I don't know if it was last year. I think it was last year, actually. They put out a new album. But have you seen Gwar perform?
I have not. I don't necessarily think that I'd have much of a companion to go to. None of my friends seem to appreciate the quality that is GWAR. So I when I was younger, I collected every single album, every single VHS tape that they had created. So I watched as much of it as I can in the pre-internet era. So I was all about it. And then now it's a little bit more accessible. The band's not the same. It's evolved a lot, but it's not the same now.
They actually have a comic book out. It came out last year, based on GWAR. I forget what it's called. It's like GWARmageddon or Gasma GWAR, or I don't know, some crazy thing. But I've been meaning to check it out. I just haven't.
I never try and deride any individual that creates something, but they just still seem like the Chuck E. Cheese animatronics of heavy metal. I couldn't quite get into it.
Hey man, I love Chuck E. Cheese.
Have you been to one recently?
No, but I thought about it because you used to go. Well, they had the animatronics with the strobe lights, and you could go under the stage when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And they had all those balls where you could die for coins and everything. But somebody pointed out, it's like, how diseased and gross those balls must be.
Oh yeah.
And you never think about that when you're a kid.
Of course, before Chuck E. Cheese, it was Showbiz Pizza.
It's true. Right. Gosh, Showbiz.
I wonder how the pizza is, because when you're a kid too, that pizza's the best because you're at a place that you love and you get the pizza. But I'm sure the pizza's pretty bad.
Well, it's awful.
Well, people. I've read even recently in the last month some article about how people seem to think the pizza at that place is just like it's that bad pizza, but it's really good. Like people seem to love the pizza there. I was like, how? Like you can't love the pizza.
It's been a couple of years, but I had it, and it made my stomach not very happy.
Yeah, I've become more of a food snob since I moved out to Chicago for sure, because there's just so many great places. I don't need to go to chains like that anymore. So in fact, I just got pizza tonight from my local place.
Well, Chicago pizza is pretty awesome.
Yeah, we inquired about that a little bit. Are you you grew up in New York? Are you a New York style pizza, or are you Chicago style pizza?
I prefer New York style. I like the big, floppy, greasy slices. I think those are the best. I like Chicago pizza quite a bit, but I don't think anything can beat that New York style pizza. And the way that cheese just kind of like melts and falls off in your mouth, like it's perfect. So, but I like the deep dish and the Chicago style, and there's a lot of really good thin crust in Chicago too. People always think that it's Chicago style, but I think most of the places do a better job at the thin crust pizza out here. Yeah.
Are you like obviously there's lots of local places. Are you like a Gino's East or a Lou Malnati's or like a Giordano's?
My favorite pizza place in Chicago is Pequod's. So
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's usually on most of the best of lists. Yeah, I really like Pequod's. Yeah, if you get a chance, go there. I would also highly recommend the Oven Grinder and Pizza Company, because they basically make a pizza pot pie. It's very different than anything you've ever had, but and they do these grinder sandwiches that are amazing. But the pizza pot pie is pretty crazy. That's pretty unique to Chicago. But yeah, Pequod's I think would probably be my favorite. But there's lots of great pizza places out here.
Yeah,
the ones you mentioned are good.
So, I wanted to get back to this. We sort of drifted away from it, but being you're talking about a little bit being a kind of becoming a food snob. I feel in some ways I've become a bit of a comic book snob, and sometimes it's hard for me to get into some of the newer ideas, and it just every time DC resets its universe, I want to tear my hair out. But
so you have no hair.
Well, you would be surprised. It grows back very quickly. That's my superpower. But so you're talking about the run with Jane Foster as Thor, and I was fully prepared to hate that when it happened. It's like, oh, female Thor. This is just another gimmick kind of thing. And I was so surprised at how much I liked that particular run of story. What did you think of some of the other changes that Marvel made at the same time? Because they tried to go in a different direction with a lot of the titles. Did you keep up with the other stuff?
I don't read too many of the superhero books these days, which is crazy because, growing up, I read a lot of that stuff. But I quite like Amazing Spider-Man. That's coming out now. Daredevil is my favorite. So no matter what happens with Daredevil, I'm always going to buy that book. Fortunately, the runs on Daredevil have been really good. If you look at some other characters, over the years, some of the runs are really not that good. But
Yeah.
Daredevil has been pretty fortunate that most of the runs have been excellent. Other than that, I don't. I like the new Hulk book. That's a horror book now.
Oh yeah, it's taken an
That's
interesting
cool.
turn.
Yes, that's very different. And I haven't really read Hulk, I think probably since the Bruce Jones stuff, and he was doing a horror version of Hulk. So, obviously Peter David, but then when Bruce Jones did it, he did a horror take on the book, and now we have that as well. But yeah, I think other than that, I think those are the only Marvel books. Moon Knight, I love, is one of my favorite characters too.
Crazy
Apparently I
Batman.
like the street level characters, but so I'll read any books that come out with Moon Knight in it. But I haven't really loved the book since maybe the Warren Ellis stuff that he did with Declan Shelby, who was at C2E2. Actually, I got him to sign my Moon Knight trade paperback. But
Nice.
so yeah, I'm trying to think of. Let me see. I'll bring up my comics list. I do a spreadsheet for comics.
I feel like we are kindred spirits. I do a spreadsheet for everything.
Yeah, I do too. Vacations, See, with me, the way I do it is I like to always have a plan in advance, especially with vacations. But when I get there, I'm cool with the plans changing. I'm
Yeah.
cool with being spontaneous as long as I have, something in place that I can fall back on. So, I've been just doing. I think it happened with the previous catalog, the Diamond previous catalog, because there's so many things that you have to keep track of, and I just started making lists for it. But yeah, Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, I like the Nick Spencer, Ryan Otley run quite a bit. I read Spider-Gwen as well. I just like that character. The stories have been pretty good throughout that. It isn't my favorite book, but I think the character is really neat. And then Conan the Barbarian. So Jason Aaron's also writing that. So I told you how I'm trying to get all the old Marvel Conans, but I'm also enjoying the new Conan the Barbarian by Jason Aaron. Especially the last issue, the number 4 was really good. And I'm also getting the sister book, The Savage Sword of Conan.
I was going to say I didn't know Conan had a sister.
No. But yeah, I think those are the only, and then Thor, of course. But those are the only Marvel books that I'm reading currently. And with DC, it's even less. So I mostly read indie books, but with DC, it's really just Batman, and I like The Wildstorm by Warren Ellis. I think that's a terrific book.
There's so many good books out there right now. It's just hard to keep track of everything. So I've got to throw a flashback to you, though. You're talking about liking Moon Knight, and he was also one of my favorite characters. Now, I started really following him back in the West Coast Avengers days.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't know
Nice.
if you remember that particular run.
I do, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember, it was actually technically an annual, if I remember correctly, where the whole team was kidnapped and taken to a moon. These aliens were going to invade the Earth, and the Avengers are the fiercest protectors, and they want to be able to overcome everything. So they're going to test each one of them, and the robot would learn from all of the different powers and become more. Did you ever remember that one?
I don't remember that particular one, no.
It's
Are you
one of
gonna
my.
tell me the rest of the story?
No, well, yeah. Okay, yeah, I got to now. So, they're going one by one. At that point, it's Hawkeye and Iron Man and Mockingbird and Tigra and Moon Knight. And so the whole bit is, Wonder Man goes first and, of course, just obliterates the thing in one punch. No, it gets better. And each time it's harder to beat because it's compensated for everything. And the last person to go is Moon Knight. And so now that it's basically immune to everything, he's not sure how he's got a chance to defeat this thing and save everybody and overload it. And then Khonshu, who is still in his head, goes, just look around. And it's like, oh, we're on a moon next to like 30 other moons. Oh, okay. It just toasts it. It was such a fun bit of writing. I couldn't help it. It made me giggle back then. Still makes me giggle when I think about it now.
Oh, cool. I hope you still have that issue.
I
Pull
do.
it out whenever you want.
I do. That's one of the few runs that I kept was the West Coast Avengers. Even up and through, I love the John Byrne run that he did on West Coast Avengers. That was so much fun. So we're, coming to a close in our time frame where we think that we might lose the attention span of the average listener. So what I want to make sure that we do is any upcoming projects or any neat things that you want to plug or talk about that you're going to be involved with. Now would be a fantastic time.
Yeah, so our third volume of Voracious is coming out starting this May, and it's called Voracious Appetite for Destruction. And the first issue drops on May 29th, so it'll be in comic shops then. And then a week later, the second issue's out. So I don't know how the Action Lab, our publisher, managed to pull that off, but the first two issues are coming out back to back. And that's a 5-issue series, and it's going to conclude the story that we started in the first two volumes, and just really excited about that. If you're interested in knowing more about Voracious, you can check us out on Twitter or Facebook. It's at Voracious Comic. My website is markisan.com. It's MARKISAN. And put a bunch of stuff up there. You can see previews of the book, pages, and just find out more about what's going on. I got a bunch of other projects in the works, but can't talk about those yet. So...
Now, we did neglect one small thing that makes Voracious so different from other comics, and you told me about this when we talked in NWI, and that was the recipe aspect.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, tell us, how cool is it? What do you include that makes people's mouth water drop onto the page and makes them buy a new issue of your comic book?
Well, recipes is something I thought of right when I thought of the concept because, it's about cooking and eating dinosaurs, at least in the beginning. So, I thought, we need to have actual recipes with dinosaur meat. And then we tell you what the substitute meat is so that you can make their recipes if you want. So it's cool because it started off with some of my recipes, and then I got some of my friends because, we're new to comics. But as we went along, we started to get real chefs from different cities, and we've done a few limited edition comics when we go to conventions, and whenever we do that, I try to get a chef from that area to give us a recipe. And so when we went to San Diego Comic-Con, we got a recipe from a chef in San Diego, and we did a San Diego inspired cover. When we went to Baltimore Comic-Con, we actually got 2 recipes from chefs in Baltimore to put in the back of the book, and we got a cover artist who's from Baltimore. So we tried to do like a area specific books and cuisine too, something that's a little bit different. So we've got quite a few recipes in the books. You could almost make our own recipe book out of everything that's come out of it. But it's been fun. We like to give people a little something extra, and that's something you can actually use. And there's been fans who have made the recipes, and they send pictures of what they've done. We had one woman make a chili recipe in there and won second place in a contest for chili. So
nice.
It's been really cool. We've actually signed at butcher shops, and restaurants. So we try to do something different. Our book is very unique. There hasn't ever really been a book like our book. So we also try to do different kinds of promotions that people haven't thought of or haven't seen before. And it's just been a blast.
You got to get a hold of Hanna-Barbera people and do a crossover with the Flintstones, man. It's just like a gimme right there. That's perfect.
Yeah, that'd be great.
No, that's pretty fun. That's in a world where it's a lot of similar things, maybe not the same similar things. It's a good way to be unique and differentiate yourself, especially when you add that added feature with the recipes. That's a really solid idea.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, there's a lot of comics out now. You know, when I was growing up, they didn't have as many comics, and I think there's almost too many comics now. Just they're coming out left and right. I think a lot of it has to do with it's getting picked up by Hollywood. Everything's getting picked up. So, you know, there's just an excess of comics. So in order to stand out, you know, you have to first, I think, have a really strong idea that people haven't done. And then if you can do something else to, you know, spotlight your book, to show that it is unique in this, like, sea of comics, you know, you should do that. So this one, it just came naturally to me. But, you know, when I do feature books, I hope that I have something like that that'll also showcase how different those books are as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for coming on to the show and giving us a chance to get to know you a little better and get to know your work a little bit better. And maybe in the future we can collaborate again. You know, we're doing this series that's probably going to take us the next 20 years to finish, where we are going through the history of comic book movies. Mm-hmm. And
wow.
It's a labor of love.
Oh, cool, boys. No, I really appreciate you having me on. I love doing podcasts. You know, if you want somebody to come on just to talk about the history of movies, I would definitely do that too. So anytime you want to have me back, I would be happy to do that.
Killer. Thank you again.
All right, boys. Thanks.
Thank you.